Okay, we're going to do the solving equations worksheet. So this says for all real numbers r, let triangle r be defined as r squared minus 1. What is triangle of 8? So this problem is not as hard as it looks. I know it might look a little difficult, but honestly, it's just fancy substitution, which is what I like to call it, because honestly, that triangle has no purpose other than telling you that the r value is 8. They replace r in the triangle with the number 8. So honestly, this whole problem is just 8 squared minus 1. So 64 minus 1 is 63, which is answer H. So this problem, again, just fancy substitution. They just want to get you to where you're not sure what that triangle means, so you think the problem is harder than it is. All right, next one. We've got 15 times 16 over A equals 3 times 4 times 5. The first thing I would do is go ahead and simplify the top. So 15 times 16 is 240, and that's over A. Oh, let me go ahead and move that up. There you go. Then I would simplify over here. So 3 times 4 is 12. 12 times 5 is 60. Our end goal is to solve for A. So what I would recommend is some cross multiplication here. Remember, when a fraction equals a fraction, you can cross multiply. So I have 240 times 1, which is 240. And then 60 times A, which is just 60A. Dividing both sides by 60, I get 240 divided by 60, which is 4. So my A value is 4, which is option C. All right, number 3. If b to the 4th minus 5 equals 226, what is the value of b to the 4th plus 9? The first thing I would do is right here, you can actually solve this problem because there's an equal sign. So I would go ahead and just add 5 to both sides. So I get b to the 4th equals 231. At this part, you might think that you actually need to solve for b and take a 4th root. I would not recommend that because this problem doesn't actually care about what you want b to the just b by itself to equal. What it cares about is what b to the 4th actually is, because right here we can substitute. What is b to the 4th plus 9? Well, b to the 4th is already 231, and then I want to add 9 to that to get an answer of 240, which is option A. So in a problem like this, it's kind of a time waster problem. They want you to take the 4th root of b to waste your time because eventually you're just going to raise it to the 4th power again. So don't let this problem trip you up. Don't let this problem make you feel like it takes forever. Just kind of look at what it wants and then solve what it wants. So don't worry about solving for b. Just substitute b to the 4th into the problem. All right, number 4. If 3 to the n plus 1 equals 81, what is the value of n? What I would recommend is just testing answers. So what is 3 to the 2nd? Well, 3 squared is 9. So 3 squared is definitely not working here. We want something that's going to give us 81. So then I'm going to do 3 cubed. Honestly, off the top of my head, I don't know what that is. It's 27. Okay, again, not 81. 3 to the 4th. 3 to the 4th actually is 81, so we know that we have the correct power. However, do not select option 4, D, because 3 to the 4th does equal 81, but remember, the exponent that we're using here is n plus 1. So we know that the exponent of n plus 1 has to actually equal 4, so by subtracting 1, n is actually 3, which is option C. So this is a prime problem where you might accidentally solve it the right way and then forget the goal of the question and see that your answer choice is listed and get excited. We don't want to do that. So in this problem, remember, all you have to do, find the exponent, but then go back. It's n plus 1, and the n value is actually 3. Number 5 is a great problem, and it always seems to cause confusion in class, so I'm going to go ahead and just write it down. So x equals ut plus 1/2 at squared. And I put my t's with little curves because I don't want to think that they're plus signs. All right, then we're going to substitute. So x equals 16. U is 0, and we're trying to solve for t here. So I have 1/2. A is 4t squared. Where some of the confusion comes from in class is this part right here, 0t. You actually don't have to write this. I'm just going to cross it off. 0t is nothing. Then I'm going to simplify 1/2 of 4. So 1/2 times 4 is 2t squared. Now, I do not want a square root yet. I want to get t squared alone. So when I divide by 2, I get 8 equals t squared. And now that t squared is isolated, I can go ahead and solve for 8, or t. So I get the square root of 8, and if you don't know how to do some fine radicals, it is something that we are going to talk about in this chapter. You can type this into your calculator and get a decimal and then go through the answer choices and see which one works for you. Or you can say, what is the perfect square hiding in 8? And that perfect square is 4. So you can break that down in the square root of 4 times the square root of 2. The square root of 4 is 2, and then I'm left with root 2, which is option A. All right, number 6. If x is 4, what is the value of k? So I'm just going to plug it in. 4 squared plus k times 4 minus 24 equals 0. Now, this is not a factoring question. It kind of gives the appearance of me having to use factoring or the quadratic formula, but once you substitute 4 in, you can recognize right here that you can just simplify. And our goal is just to solve for k. So 16 minus 24 is negative 8. So I get 4k minus 8 equals 0. I'll add 8 and I'll get 4k equals 8 dividing by 2. My k value is 2, which is option C. So just be mindful, it looks like a factoring problem, but once you substitute, it's actually a very simple algebra question. Okay, number 7. 8 to the 2/3 power times 2 to the negative 1. Honestly, what I would do on this problem is just type it in my calculator. It just makes this problem just easier. And my goal here is to make sure that you guys have the easiest method. So I get 8 to the 2/3 times 2 raised to the negative 1. And it's 2, which is option H. That is the best method that I have to do this problem. Now, if you're in a slightly older calculator, you'll want to put the little arrow, the little caret symbol that is above the division sign. But we'll practice in class to make sure that we can type exponents incorrectly. But that's all I would do on this problem. I wouldn't even waste my time trying to figure it out by hand. I would just go ahead and solve it using a calculator. So this is definitely a calculator question. All right, number 8, solve for the variable. So basic, solve for the variable. I want to get 4x with this 7x by subtracting. Or by adding, sorry. 7 plus 4 is 11x plus 9 equals negative 2. Subtract 9. 11x equals negative 11. Dividing both sides by 11, I get negative 1, which is option G. Basic, solve the problem. Number 9 also trips some of us up in class, but let's kind of solve it out. It's not as hard as it looks. Our goal is to solve for the value of x, which means we want x to be isolated. So the first thing I'm going to do is move the 9y to the other side. I want to do that first. So I get 3x equals 18 minus 9y. I want to divide everything by 3, every piece. So I get x equals 6 minus 3y. Then I'm going to look at my answer choices, and this is where in class you guys felt like you didn't do this part right because your answer wasn't exactly there. But remember, we've talked about if my answer choice isn't there, I can rearrange this problem. So notice how I need a constant of positive 6. So this one's out, and this one's out. And I'm stuck between these two. You can rearrange this. Just re-put negative 3y first and 6 second. So negative 3y plus 6 is option D. So just because your answer looks like it's not there, just rearrange the problem. It's nothing that you can't do. Okay, number 10. Our goal is to solve for y. So again, I want to isolate the y variable. So the first thing I need to do is move the ax to the other side. I'm left with by equals c minus ax. Then I want to divide by b to get y isolated. So y equals c minus ax all over b, which, looking at my answer choices, is option G. Just isolating a variable. We're just using algebraic properties to solve for a missing piece. All right, let's hop to the back. Get a new piece of paper because these pens like to bleed through. All right, number 11. We want to solve for the value of x plus 2. So the first thing I've got to do is know what x is. So I'm going to distribute. 3 times x is 3x. 3 times 2 is positive 6. 5 times x is 5x. And 5 times negative 8 is negative 40. I'll go ahead and subtract 3x to the other side. I want to keep my x's positive. And again, that's just personal preference. It really just depends on how you prefer to solve algebra. Some of you like to keep the x's positive, but again, that's personal preference. Completely up to you. You can keep the x negative. That just means that you're going to have to divide by a negative, which is totally fine. It's how you prefer to solve algebra. So our final answer is x equals 23. Do not pick A. A is there to trick you. Notice how it's first. We get excited when our answers are listed first. We're like, woohoo, we did it right. It's the first choice. It's got to be good. But be very, very careful here. The correct answer to this problem is actually B, because it wants to know the value of x plus 2. Well, x is 23 plus 2 is 25, which is option B. So be very, very, very careful here. Always finish the problem. All right, we want y to be defined as negative y squared minus 6. What is the value of braces 5? So this problem, again, fancy substitution. Here we have y being replaced with 5, so that means we're just subbing in y. So when I do that, I want to be very careful because this problem is very tricky. Negative, we're replacing just y minus 6. So in this problem, we are squaring just the y value, because notice how the negative y is not in parentheses. Notice how the problem does not look like this. Okay, it does not look like this, which means I'm not going to plug it in like this. I don't want to do that. And this is a very hard problem because the ACT is very purposeful with their negatives and having you square the negatives. It's because they want to mess you up. They really do. They're not grouping that negative with the y. So 5 squared is 25, and I still have this negative. It's along for the ride, so it's just going to follow through. I'm going to bring down that negative 6. Go ahead and bring down minus 6. So negative 25 minus 6 is negative 31. So be really careful. The problem does not say square the negative 5. It's just squaring y. So again, you need to be careful when you're doing this problem. And let's say that you're even unsure and you just want to make sure that you're doing this right. You're like, I don't feel good about this problem. You can type it straight into your calculator, but you want to type it how it's shown. So negative 5 squared minus 6 gives me negative 31. So just be careful if you're not sure, check it. But the ACT will love to give you those negatives that you have to square or not square because they want you to mess up. All right, number 13 is a quadratic formula problem. Although they did not give it to you, you should know that the quadratic formula is x equals negative b plus or minus the square root of b squared minus 4ac all over 2a. Now, I'm not going to sing the Pop Goes the Weasel song. I've already sang it in class, so you can watch our class videos. But here is the formula. So let's learn the letters. So the letter A is in front of the x squared. The letter B is in front of the x, and the letter C stands for constant. Then I can substitute. So negative, and notice how we talked in class, they purposefully made the B value negative because they want to mess with you. I mean, that's the whole point. They want you to have a negative 3 out there instead of a positive. They're doing it on purpose. Also, when you come inside, you also have to square the negative, which again, we talked in class, they're doing it on purpose to make this harder. Minus 4. Now my a value, there's nothing in front of the x squared, so the a value is a 1. And our c value is also a 1. All over 2 times 1. Look at your answer choices. So the first thing I want us to notice is the answer choices all have square roots in them, okay? Which means I should not be typing this directly into my calculator. I need to be mindful because once you type that square root in your calculator, you're not getting it back. And it's very hard to go backwards. So what I would recommend is simplifying your double negative. So negative 3 is positive 3 plus or minus the square root. Then I would only type the underneath portion of my square root. Okay, I would only type the underneath portion because in this problem, if you type the square root, it goes away and we don't want that. So I get negative 3 squared minus 4 times 1 times 1, which is 5. Now I can just leave that underneath the square root and my answer becomes a lot easier to see. So looking at my final answer, my correct answer would be A. So whenever you're working with the quadratic formula or square roots and the answer has square roots in your problem, try to just plug in the underneath part so your square root doesn't disappear. All right, number 14. 14 is just, again, a basic solve for x. So I'm just going to combine some like terms here. 3x and 4x is 7x minus 2 equals 5. Add 2, so 7x equals 7. X is 1. Option D. Basic solve for a problem. Okay, or solve for a variable. All right, number 15. Again, another basic problem, just solve for y. 3 times y is 3y. 3 times 2 is 6. 2 times y, 2y. 2 times 4 is 8. I like to keep my variables positive, but again, that's a personal life choice. If you don't really care, you can move the 3y. It does not matter how you do algebra. That's the one really great thing about algebra is that it doesn't really matter how you solve it. As long as you're following the laws and the rules of math, you're going to get the right answer. So our correct answer here is 2. Okay, number 16 is a slightly sneaky problem, and the reason that it's slightly sneaky is because of this negative here. Sometimes we'll forget that that negative goes only in the top or only in the bottom if it's sticking out like that. Also, another problem that you might come into is you might not see it. You might just think that that whole thing is connected and it's just 1/4. So be careful. What I would do is I would just put that negative somewhere. So I'm going to put the negative in the numerator. It's mathematically correct to move it to the top, although it's not wrong if you put it in the bottom. But just be mindful that this is not a positive 1/4 fraction. It's very easy to kind of look over and not see that negative sign. All right, so to continue, we cross multiply. 5 times 4 is 20. Negative 1 times 2x is negative 2x. And when I divide by negative 2, I get negative 10, which is option B. If you had envisioned this problem as just a positive 1/4 fraction, you would have chosen option E. So just be careful, read the question, make sure you're paying attention. Okay, number 17. Number 17 involves fractions, and this part right here where it says r cannot equal -5, that's just telling you that you're not going to have an undefined fraction. It really serves no purpose in actually solving the problem. Whenever I look at these fractions, the most important thing I want to look for is GCFs. So r plus 5, there's really nothing I can do, so I'm going to leave the denominator just r plus 5. However, in the numerator, I see a 4, and I see it 20. The GCF between 4 and 20 is 4. So let's pull out the GCF. 4 divided by 4 is 1, and r is left. 20 divided by 4 is 5. Now, I can go ahead and cancel these because they're being multiplied. These are multiplication pieces. I cannot just start at the beginning and cancel out these r's. I can't do that. I can't just subtract the top and bottom. It doesn't work like that if we're not working with exponents. So this correct answer is just 4. So look for GCFs. Okay, 18 is a great problem because instead of it giving you the answer, it's giving you the answer in words, and it's up to you to read them. So first thing I want to do, we're solving for x, so I need to cross multiply. 1 times z is z. Y times x is yx. And if I want to get x alone, I would divide by y. So I get z over y equals x. Notice how I'm working with division. So it's not going to be, x does not equal the sum. That's addition. It also doesn't mean difference, and it doesn't mean product. I'm dividing. So my division word is quotient. When you are reading the quotient, the numerator is listed first and then the denominator. So the quotient of y and z, that's actually a fraction with y in the numerator. I have z in the numerator. So option E says the quotient of z and y. Z is in the top, y is on the bottom, which is exactly what I see here. So my answer is E. All right, number 19. This problem, I would not try to stress myself out trying to find a common denominator because you have a letter in there, and you're actually going to probably spend more time trying to do it that way. What I would do is just treat this problem like normal. I would just subtract 4. So I'd have negative 3 over n equals. Again, this class, I have no judgment of you using your calculator. The whole goal of this class is to let you unleash your mathematical ability that you've been told you can't use your whole high school career. So it is totally okay. Use that calculator. It's not like you're not going to have a calculator in your pocket your whole life. So use the calculator. It's not a big deal. Don't overthink it. Don't feel embarrassed if you're using it, things like that. It's basic. Just subtract 4, use a calculator if you need it. All right, so in this problem, I actually don't need to do anything else. These fractions are technically supposed to be equal. Well, I've got negative 3 over n equals negative 3 over 2. If I'm looking for the value of n, this fraction has to end with a 2. The numerators are the same. N has to be 2. That's the only way to do it. Now, let me drag this problem out. So I can also cross multiply. Negative 3 times n is negative 3n. Negative 3 times 2 is negative 6. Divide by negative 3, I get 2. Okay, yeah, it didn't take me that long to solve it, but just know you don't have to. Use your common sense, see that the fractions are identical, and just replace n with 2. Okay, for the final problem, it's again a cross multiplication problem. Remember, it's top times denominator equals denominator times numerator. I got 3 parenthesis e plus 4. Equals 1 parenthesis e minus 2. Again, I am purposely showing all the work here for this tutorial video. I don't expect you to write all that down. You could easily distribute. Just make sure that you're multiplying the 3 to everything in the numerator. That's the most important part. Subtract e, I'll get 2e plus 12 equals negative 2. And I definitely encourage you, if you're mathematically comfortable, combine some steps together. If you're comfortable doing that, if you're comfortable moving this e and not showing that work, by all means do it. I'm just doing it for the sake of the examples to, help you follow through. So all I did here was solve for e, and I got e to equal negative 7.